Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Hope everybody's having a great day. Yes, my future is so bright. I gotta wear my shades and my sleeve. SPF 50. Check out the video I did a couple days ago about it. Order you some on Amazon with your boy's link and give me 50 cents from Uncle Jeff if you use my link. I also get the glasses on there. They're pretty handy. They're pretty handy on there. But anyway, let me talk to you about cheap freight. Cheap freight. Who just got triggered? I just said cheap freight. Everybody got triggered, I'd imagine. It triggers me when I hear about it. There's three things in this world that trigger me these days: cheap freight, inflation, and fuel costs, because they're all three getting in my pocket and taking all the money out, basically tearing it up and throwing it, burning it and whatnot. So I did a survey on my community tab on YouTube. If you didn't check that out, go to my community tab, check it out, and go in there and see what it says. It says, what is cheap freight? It's that survey there. 1,400 people voted on it. So we're going to go through some numbers real quick. Before we get to the numbers, I want to talk about the question I posed on that survey. What is cheap freight? Basically, I asked a question. If you were on the load board looking for a load, and there was an 800-mile load that was going into an average area, what's the least amount you would haul that for? Now, if you didn't participate in the survey, that's fine. Leave it down in the comments now. Let me know what kind of freight you haul and why that's your base, because in the question I didn't put any kind of freight on there. Basically just whatever kind of freight you're pulling. That's what I was kind of asking. Just a very informal survey. Just kind of wanted a little bit of, because you always hear people say don't pull cheap freight, but I don't know what people consider cheap freight. So we did a little survey here to kind of get an idea. I did an 800-mile load because an 800-mile load is going to span 2 days. Okay, so that poses another layer to it, because not only when you pick a load do you need to be thinking about how much rate per mile is, you also need to be thinking about day rates. You need to be thinking about, there's a ton of stuff when you're picking freight. You need to be thinking, when's it picking up, when's it dropping off, where's it picking up, where's it dropping off, what's the day rate, what's the mileage rate, what's the this, what's the that. There's about 50 million things that go into a good calculation on a freight rate. Just saying, there's a lot. Maybe not 50 million, but it's close. So anyway, let's get to the numbers of it all. I'm going to slide over here a little bit. We're going to put some numbers up here. So basically the survey asked, what is cheap freight to you? Say you were picking up an 800-mile load going to an average area. Click on the lowest rate you would take. Okay. So we started out with $3.50 a mile. 14% of people said they go on that. That's the minimum they would take, is $3.50 a mile. Now, if your minimum is $3.50 a mile, you're going to be setting a lot, But I had a couple guys chime in that do heavy haul and specialized freight. I totally get that. With heavy haul, the price of equipment, tires, fuel, everything, $3.50 a mile is probably cheap freight to those guys. When you're, 40% deadhead miles, just to get to some loads, maybe even more than that. You got to have a good mileage rate on that. So the second one I had on there was $3 a mile. 18% of people said $3 a mile is the least they would take going into an average area. I like that number. That's a good number. There's still a lot of meat left on the bone for me at $3 a mile, but I'll be honest with you, it's getting tough. It's getting tough these days to stay at $3 a mile. The one that got the most votes at 39% was $2.50 a mile. I totally understand that, because for me, if you factor in everything that's got to be factored in on standard freight, we're talking dry van, reefer, flatbed, $2.50 a mile with all these costs going up like they are, I feel like $2.50 a mile is probably the most legit. That's why 40% of people picked it. But $2 a mile got 14%, and $1.50 a mile got 15%. People say they would take the $1.50. Now, for me, it's a non-judgmental question. Whatever you take it for is up to you. You have to run your business. That's one of the things I cannot stand about people that say, don't take freight less than this amount. Well, unless you're looking in the mirror, you shouldn't be telling other people how to run their business, in my opinion. So, You know, I see a guy on YouTube the other day saying, you know, you gotta work the brokers. You can't let them get you for less than $3.50 a mile. I'm gonna tell you right now, $3.50 a mile everywhere you go, you're gonna be sitting a lot, unless you got some connections, or you're doing specialized freight, because you got to look at the overall rate of it. You know, it's like if you deadhead 1,000 miles to pick up a load that's going 200 miles that pays $350. $3.50 a mile on 200 miles. So you just drove freaking 1,200 miles on $700. Like, you got to look at the overall cost. You know what I mean? Like, I can make it look real good and take my deadhead miles out of my loads I talk about on my weekly recaps. But if I take the deadhead out of it, it's kind of like a very dishonest weekly recap, because I'm pretty sure I still buy fuel for deadhead miles. I still have to buy tires for deadhead miles. Maintenance, you know, fund for deadhead. Deadhead miles are really no difference on my input cost. They all factor in. All miles count. So, I mean, if you're getting it, I ain't mad at you. Get it, but you know, to say hold out for $3.50 a mile these days is kind of tough. Now again, if you're getting it, more power to you. So, you know, I was surprised a lot of people said $1.50 a mile. I'm probably still profitable at $1.50 a mile, but I got to tell you, with inflation hitting like it is, and me going to buy groceries for the family, and everything just going up and up and up and up in price, I feel like that $1.50, I'm giving it away. Now, I have no hard set fast rule on how I determine which freight I'm taking, other than I pick the best decision I have available at the time. That's how I pick freight. I take the best possible option I have at the time. Now, here's what I like to do. I like to go from Minnesota to somewhere else, and from somewhere else right back to Minnesota. That limits my options. I totally get that. You guys that stay out for a couple weeks at a time, 3, 4, 5 weeks, months, you run all over the country, you got more options. So you can play with the numbers a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, you can take you a 200-mile load out of the Northeast into, you know, into Pennsylvania, and think about something out of Pennsylvania, reposition yourself. I'm not a big fan of a reposition in my situation, because the way that works is it's just delaying me from getting back to Minnesota. And that's my goal. As a trucker, I want to go out, I want to come back. I'm kind of, you know, maybe I'm not a real trucker. I don't know, but that's the way I like to do it. So for me, when I say I have no hard set rule, is I typically don't want to set in an area. That's my last option, is to set somewhere and wait on a better load. Because when freight volumes are down like they are right now, we get into a position where you could sit there for 3 months and never get $2 a mile out of an area. We know where those areas are, and we know the times of year. If you've been doing this long enough, they're there. And so to say, well, I'm going to sit here till I get $3.50 a mile, well, good. You might sit there till Christmas time. I'm just saying. But if that's how you want to run your business, that's how you run your business. For me, that is the last option. That's the last option of the 3 that I kind of consider. The second option is to take a lesser paying load back towards Minnesota. Maybe not the entire length of the ride back to Minnesota. Maybe if I'm in the Northeast, maybe a load from the Northeast to Chicago, and then unload in Chicago, reevaluate the situation, try to get from Chicago back to Minnesota. That's my meh option. My favorite option, because I love to just go straight back to Minnesota, my favorite option is find a load somewhere between where I'm at and Minnesota that pays decent comparative to all miles. There has been lots of times when I could pull a load from the Northeast all the way back to Minnesota for $2,500. And you get to looking, and there's a load in, you know, let's just use Cleveland as an example. There's a load in Cleveland going to Minnesota that's paying the same amount as a load all the way from the Northeast. So I could deadhead 600 miles over to Cleveland or 500 miles over to Cleveland and make the same amount of money from Cleveland back to Minnesota. There's been lots of times, the Southeast is one of the places that I get that a lot. A lot of times I can take a load down to Florida, South Georgia, and end up coming all the way back up to Tennessee and getting a load that pays, $2,500 from Tennessee back to Minnesota, and the loads in Florida are paying $2,500 from Florida back to Minnesota. It's like, well, why wouldn't I deadhead 700 freaking miles for the same amount of money instead of hauling the weight? So that's my preferred option. But when that one's not available, I will do the repositioning on a lesser paying load. And like I said, I'm just not a big fan of the sitting and waiting on better paying freight, because you're gambling with time at that point. And the lower the freight volumes go, the more odds of the gamble, get stretched not in your favor, basically. So some of the things I think hurt the freight market, just my opinion here. I think if you are in like $1 a mile lease purchase, I think right now if you're hauling refrigerated freight or flatbed freight or dry van freight for $1.05 a mile plus fuel surcharge, I think that hurts the overall market, because you could be making more money, honestly. I do think you could. So I'm not, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, but I do think that hurts the overall market. I know most of the time that's contract freight, but sometimes it's not contract freight. Sometimes they have to go on the load board to reposition those trucks, and they'll take $1.60 a mile because they don't care. They're paying $1.40 with the dollar and the fuel surcharge. They're paying $1.40 to you, but that 20 cents to them is basically, profit. I mean, what are they really paying out of their end? You know what I mean? Like a little money for a trailer pool, maybe. I mean, honestly, that's probably all built into that lease purchase you're doing. But that's just my opinion. I think if you're in a $1 a mile lease purchase, I think most of the time that hurts the spot market when people work for less. Yeah, just throwing it out there. Not judging anybody. I just overall, that's what I think. Another thing that kills me when you talk about cheap freight is that moving out of an area to get to a better area and justifying, well, I hauled it for enough to cover my fuel. Well, if you're hauling it for enough to cover your fuel, you are losing money. There's more involved in moving freight than just fuel cost. Now, I'm not hating on that, but I'm just saying you have to acknowledge that you are losing money if you are hauling for fuel cost. Are you losing money overall? Maybe not, because here's how I look at it. Whenever I look for that reposition load, a big determining factor is what is it and where's it picking up and where's it going. Now, let's use a little example here, okay? Let's say I am in the Northeast and I need to get back to Minnesota. Say I find a load out of the Northeast to Chicago, and then I unload in Chicago. I can find a decent load out of Chicago back to Minnesota, okay? That's the example. Now, if the loads out of Chicago are not paying what the loads out of the Northeast are paying for the whole trip, sometimes if it is a easy light load, I will grab that light load just to put some money in the pocket. Now, when I do that, I have to acknowledge if I'm hauling for fuel costs, I am losing money on that freight. But I am a fan of some money beats no money. And I know a lot of guys don't like that. They say, well, that hurts the overall market. It probably does, but at the end of the day, it's business. And, like I say, some money beats no money any day of the week in business. So, do I like doing that? No. Would I do that a whole lot? Hell no. It's one of those things like if I was over on the East Coast and it's a freaking frozen food load and they want to pay $1.50 a mile to Chicago, no, keep it by all means. Now, have I hauled freight for, this was not recently, but a couple years ago, buck and a quarter a mile. Yeah, I've hauled some partial loads. They were, on the load board as a partial. And sometimes, like 1 or 2 pallets, paying a $1.25, $1.50 a mile, yeah, I'm going to haul that because it's a dry load. It's going to come off. It's going to go on. It's going to come off easier, more than likely. Not a lot of risk involved with it. It can't be anything real, sensitive or touchy, because I'm not going to risk it for no money. You know what I mean? Like, now, do I want some money in my pocket for that? Was that like a 500-mile run for, I don't know what it was, like $650, something like that? It was basically no money. But at the same time, this is back when fuel was, a lot cheaper than it is now. I'd have to really evaluate that $1.50 a mile now, because, in the month of April, I had a 64 cents a mile fuel cost. And that's what a very fuel efficient truck, and really, really trying to dig in and get some discounts and shop that freaking fuel. And still at 64 cents a mile. So you figure, I got 64 cents a mile fuel cost, 20 cents a mile for basically maintenance these days. You know what I mean? I had to up my maintenance just because tires have went up, fuel has went up, everything has went up. So I'm like 20 cents a mile just to maintain the truck. Not even counting, like, that's not money for breakdown, because I separate. Maintenance account is for routine maintenance. A breakdown is a totally different thing. A breakdown is how much money you got to fix it, because that's how much you got to do or you're going to go out of business. But now a maintenance account is like a scheduled thing to me. But you're 64 cents on fuel, 20 cents on maintenance. I gotta put a little bit in for replacement cost on this truck. I don't get to operate this truck for free. You know what I mean? Like, I paid almost every month for the first 18 months. I paid double payments on this truck through some times where it was pretty tough to make a double payment, let's face it. But I can coast it a little bit, but I also know if I coast it the whole time, the truck's eventually going to need to be replaced, and I'm going to have no money to replace it. So I'm kind of, got to put a little bit back for that. I got to put a little bit back for this, and before you know it, I'm at a $1.50 break even, and that's with a low-cost, fuel-efficient operation. So, for me, of the choices, $3.50, $3, $2.50, $2, $1.50, I'm going to say I'm probably going to vote in that $2 a mile range. I can still make profit. It would be worth moving at $2 a mile, but on a day rate, we're talking 800 miles at $2. That's basically $800 a day on a day rate. That's not killing it by any means. I'm not married to trucking. I'm not going to be out here on the road living like a trucker for no money. It just ain't going to happen. Like, will I sacrifice and put some money into it and try to keep it rolling? Yeah, of course. It's my business. I'm not going to just fold and go away because times get tough for, a little while. But let's face it, like, we sacrifice a lot to be on the road. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's why trucking should pay like it did in 2021. I felt very justified at the 2021 rates. I know a lot of people kept saying, oh, well, truckers taking advantage of the market and, they're blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, what's it worth to you to be away from your family all week? If you don't know what OTR trucking's like, you don't know what it's like. You know what I mean? I'll be honest with you. It is, it's like afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon time right now, like 3 in the afternoon. What time did I get up? I woke up at 8 o'clock yesterday night, or last night. Yeah, hell. 8 o'clock, that's my day. You know what I mean? I sat all day at a cold storage yesterday, got loaded finally at, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then basically, they give you one of those things. Hey, you've been here for 8 hours. You got your split break in. You want to make it to Walmart on time? They smack you on the ass and get you the paperwork and tell you, get at it. And that's what you got to do. You got to drive all damn night and all damn day just to get somewhere. To me, that's why I don't want to do it for the super cheap. Now, I get it. The question wasn't saying, like, what would you haul freight for the rest of your life? Or what can you haul freight for forever? This said, one load to get you out of an area into an average area. What's the lowest rate you would take? That's why I say $2 a mile. For me, I think right now with rates and equipment cost, you know, because that's another thing I look at when I think about, you know, I say I can't operate this truck for free. I got a still of a deal on this truck because I bought it right at the beginning of that thing that happened in 2020. I timed it really good. And not because I have foresight or anything, because it's just when I bought it, it just timed out right. Now, the first month or two sucked because there was no freight to haul, but I, you know, same thing, I kind of muddled through and then it got good again. But now when I go to replace this truck, if I had to replace it right now, holy crap. You know what I mean? I'd pay double what I paid for this truck in 2020. So, I don't know. Just the overall cheap freight talk. You know, I just wanted to have a general consensus with everybody and talk about cheap freight, because you hear it so much, but no one ever explains it or talks about it. They just say, don't haul it. Well, what is it? What does it even mean? It's so personal, you know? It's like, for me, things that hurt the overall market, another one is not knowing your numbers. You know, what was your fuel cost in the month of April? If you don't know that, might want to think about it. You know, to me, you got to have a general rule, because at a certain point, I feel like we're hitting the event horizon here of, I think a lot of people probably not making a profit right now. They're just running to try to make a truck payment and, you know, pay a fuel bill. But how long can you really keep that up? You know, it's like, we got to be sustainable out here. Trying not to tell anybody how to run their business, because I you know, it's not right for me to tell anybody how to run their business. But as far as everybody participating in this, I really appreciate the damn, I can't talk. I appreciate everybody voting. I'll just put it that way. Damn. A couple comments we'll run through real quick on the video. A couple people kind of, you know, put perspective on it. Bobby G says no less than $3 a mile. I totally understand that, especially if you're doing some sort of specialized freight, man. I totally get it. M. Lowe says if I would have asked 2 years ago, he would have said he'd accepted the $2, but not now. Not now. It's not acceptable now. And I kind of get that. You know, that was me. I thought about the $2 a mile, but I thought, that $2 a mile is pretty touchy, man. That's pretty low if you think about the input costs that we're dealing with these days. And my boy Rich Taco says $1,000 a day. So, you know, he would have been in that like 250 crowd, because that would have put you in like at $1,000 a day on an 800-mile run. And that's why I done that. That's why I made it a 2-day run. That way it added another layer of, you know, what you got to think about when you're booking a load, you know. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate everybody watching the video. Thanks for sticking around this long. If you did, smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell, get the notifications. Check out the description for a ton of links that'll save you money and make you money. And until next time, guys, take care of each other. Remember, people are more important than trucking. Bye.